information is the single best investment that you can have, because information is the only thing that buys you time. A lot of people want to go faster, but then they don't want to spend money on learning how to go faster. And that is the only thing that gets you from point A to point B in a shorter period of time.
When you make I am statements, they are the strongest statements that you can make because they are deeply embedded beliefs about what you believe about yourself. When you meet someone new, you meet a girl on a date and you're like, I have a short fuse, right? I have a temper. But just to give you the types of things that people say all the time that do not serve them. Does this belief serve me? If it does not, stop saying it. The more you want the positive outcome to occur, the more you will purposefully blind yourself because you want to save your ego and how you feel about yourself, because it makes you feel good to think about this positive outcome. But it does not affect the percentage likelihood that it actually occurs in the real world, which is why you see other people, because you can be rational about others, you see other people make these terrible decisions and you think to yourself, why on God's earth would they make those decisions? When in reality, that person is you and it's other people who are looking at you.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because when I started my first business, I really struggled to believe in myself. I was making $300 a month and quit on my business partner. And the thing that saved me was watching the stories of successful entrepreneurs. They gave me strategies as well as hope and belief that just maybe I could do it myself as well. And I hope that this video here today helps you get a little bit more belief in yourself, because I still need the videos for myself today too. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Alex Hormozi, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1, generate passive income.
The goal that most of us entrepreneurs have, right, is to have freedom, right? So we want to not work or not have to work and have money coming towards us. And the thing is what I have learned is that you can make anything passive and you can make anything active. And one of the difficulties for entrepreneurs when you switch from entrepreneur to investor is that you want to take your passive things and make them more active in order to increase your returns. And that's a very tempting thing to do because we're entrepreneurial and we can see where the margin is getting lost, right? But if you always chase time, then you'll always be able to make whatever it is. Like if you chase time always, then eventually you'll end up with all your time and you should have some left over that is coming towards you, right? And so I'll give you a quick example. Gym Launch 2 years ago, I think made 17 million. I mean, according to our quality of earnings, we made 17 million in profit in 2018. And this year, we'll probably do 8 million-ish in profit. So you're like, whoa, you cut in half. Here's the difference. When we did 17 million, I was the business. It was 100% Alex's face wrapped with a monetization structure wrapped around it. I was taking calls. I was doing all of these things. I was definitely CEO. I was definitely in front of the marketing. I was also the product. I was doing all those things, right? Right now, the business basically generates half the profit, but it involves me for about 90 minutes a week. And so my dollars per hour are significantly higher because now I also have all these other things that I can do with the time that has earned back for me.
Rule number 2 is manage stress.
Managing stress is a learned skill. It doesn't come from changing conditions. Anything external does not influence how stressed you are. The judgment you have about the external is what influences how stressed you are. I don't like the term mindset. You know what I mean? I hate it overall. But in terms of like reframing and perspective shifts, I think those are powerful to think through, which is at the end of your life, you will probably be equally satisfied and dissatisfied. There will be things that you will wish you would have accomplished, and there will be things that you will be proud that you had done. The same as right now. And so I think it's much more about figuring out how to separate your internal dialogue and feelings, or at least response to your feelings, from the external. You don't have to go through the fire. The fire gives you evidence that you have the trait. You can be a patient person but never been tested. But the moment you're tested, you have evidence that you are patient. So all it does is it gives us reinforcement that what we thought about ourselves all along was true. What is the practice of doing this? It's being able to separate and identify when you feel stressed. Step 1, I feel stressed. I feel it. And whatever your triggers are. For me, I feel tight in my chest. That's how I know that I start feeling stressed. So when I feel that, I think, okay, what is causing this? What is the trigger that I have chosen to judge as good or bad? What is the label that I'm ascribing to a situation? You have to peel back the layer and say, what is it? And then usually, if you take it all the way down, it means that you think you're going to die. Sales were low today, which means sales are going to be low forever, which means I'm going to have to fire everyone, which means everyone's going to hate me, and I'm going to be isolated and alone, and I'm going to die. Right? Just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. Thoughts are not true. Not all thoughts are true. They're just thoughts. Same as feelings. They're literally just chemicals in your brain that are meant to keep you alive, not to help you succeed. When you feel stressed, stop and be like, I'm feeling emotion here. I wonder what is causing this. What am I labeling as bad? Do I need to change anything about this external condition? Probably not. So do I think that law of large numbers is that if I have 365 days and I did the exact same thing, there's going to be days that are in the bottom 10% and days that are in the top 10% with the exact same conditions, like in terms of behaviors? The answer is yes. And so I just describe this as like, this just might be one of those bottom 10% days. And bottom 10% days happen every 10 days. Independent. It's 3 a month. It's almost every other, every week-ish. And even of those 36 days, you might even be in a bottom 10% day of those, which is a bottom 1% day. 3.6 days a year. Horrible days. But does it mean we need to change our behavior? Probably not. Because our behavior over a long trend line has tripled this business.
Rule number 3 is be patient.
Big things take time, all right? I knew that when I was, younger in the entrepreneurial game, I was very obsessed with fast wins. What can we do this week? And what can we do this month? Rather than thinking 10 years out, 20 years out. And the thing is that I learned this lesson from Andrew Chung, who owns Panda Express, and he lives in the building above me. He actually owns this entire building, which he bought for, I think, like $150 million. And he owns the building next to us, which he bought for $5.6 billion. Big dude. And he owns 2,600 locations of Panda Express. And he owns them all 100%. He has no franchisees, no licensors. And when asked on an interview what the keys to success were, there were 2 themes that came out. One, he said, your customer must absolutely love your product. And number 2 is that big things take time, right? It took him 45 years and he still continues to grow to this day. And the majority of the growth has happened in the last 5 years or so. This year, he opened up 600 locations of those 2,600. So a huge chunk happens near the end. And that depth of expertise takes time to build. Because remember, we're competing against other people who've also been doing this for a long period of time. And the one thing that we can take to our advantage is if we've just been doing this longer, right? And we get these compounding results that happen over a long period of time. And so I think rather than making this a patience platitude, thinking of this as what could I do for a very, very long period of time? Because the only things that will be very big will take a long time. And I must be motivated to not change my course or see some shiny object that's going to take me away from my overarching vision or goal. And so I think when I started thinking this way, the companies that I had continued to grow better with higher quality people and made higher quality decisions because it wasn't about the short win. It was just, is this going to matter in 10 years? And what are the few things that will matter in that long period of time? And then let's ruthlessly eliminate everything else and just focus on those things.
Rule number 4 is do the boring work.
There's a saying in our community called do the boring work. And a lot of times we don't confront the work that must be done because it's not exciting or sexy and it feels somehow like it's beneath us. Prospecting and doing $100 a day can feel tedious. Posting and repurposing the same content across lots of different media sources can feel tedious. Reaching out to people and asking them if they know someone who might be interested in your products or services might feel tedious. Or creating 100 different ad variations with different hooks and headlines can seem tedious. It's very easy to understand, very hard to do, mostly because people don't have the discipline and the work ethic to go through the boring work, which kind of leads to the second one here, which is that there's a saying between my closest friend and I, Dr. Kashi, violence is the answer. Sometimes when you have this outcome that you must achieve in your life because of the goals and insecurities that we have set upon ourselves, that just being violent with the level of activity that we are doing ultimately get us much closer than the nuances and the skill that sometimes we like to project and pretend matter more than just physically doing a sheer higher volume of work. Number 3 is that if you do more than you are doing right now, you will get more than you currently have. And that is a promise and you can take that to the bank. And number 4 is do what matters most first. So right now you probably have lots of things that, fill up your day in the morning, all that kind of stuff. But there are only 4 activities that will actually generate more business for you, period, that is new. All right. Number 1 is reaching out to people you know. Number 2 is posting to an audience that you know. Number 3 is reaching out to people who you don't know one-on-one. And number 4 is advertising, right? Those are the only four ways that you can get new clients. And so if you're not doing one of those 4 things and you're struggling to get customers, you're not doing lots of those 4 things as your primary activities, then that is probably one of the reasons that you don't have the amount of customers that you wish you had. All right. And so what I want to do is take this quick moment to introduce an equation that I've thought a lot about, but it's V times S times D. So volume times skill times time. And this is kind of a flywheel that feeds itself and I'll get to the actual wording behind this, but essentially the more volume to do, the better you are at it and the longer you do it, the more throughput you will ultimately have. The more outcome, the more clients, the more sales, the more leads you will ultimately have from doing it. All right, so let's dive into this in a little bit more. So in other words, and this is based in just like pure foundational principles of logic, right? The more we do, the better we get. The better we get, the more we do because we like it, because we're better at it, right? And the longer we do something, the better we get. The better we get, the longer we do it.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5 is develop good values.
One of the things that permeates any Chick-fil-A, if you've ever been there, is that they have a culture of service.
You're one step away from an awesome lunch meal. It'll be a pleasure serving you at our drive-thru window. After 2 more things, you know what that is. Kiss Palm Beach, you guys are awesome. 1 and 2. You have an awesome day up ahead.
Thank you.
Chick-fil-A.
And so what they did was they actually studied the hospitality industry and even hired people from Ritz-Carlton to help them create an exquisite experience at Chick-fil-A. Esther Cathy noted that when he wanted everybody in his team and his company to start saying my pleasure, it didn't change until he changed how he spoke.
He's trained all of us to always respond to thank you by saying my pleasure. So if somebody wants a refill, my pleasure.
People will learn 10 times more from watching what you do than listening to what you say. And so if you say, hey, we're all about being on time here, but you, the CEO, are late, it will never work. We have to pick the very few values that we know that we will never break, that we will always stick with, which is why values have to be true to you, not nice words on the wall, because they have to be things that you would actually live, otherwise they are meaningless.
Rule number 6 is being mindful of what you say.
When you make I am statements, they are the strongest statements that you can make because they are deeply embedded beliefs about what you believe about yourself. And so if you say, I am this way, when you describe yourself, when you meet someone new, you meet a girl on a date and you're like, I have a short fuse, right? I have a temper. I am disorganized. I am not good with time. I am not good with money. I hate even saying this, right? But just to give you the types of things that people say all the time that do not serve them. Does this belief serve me? If it does not, stop saying it. Period. And say something else, right? Or at the very least, if you feel compelled to have to describe this thing, then say, I have a tendency or I struggle with behaviors that are this way, rather than I am, number 1. Number 2, be incredibly weary of the superstitions and routines and religion that you adhere to, that you claim is the source of your productivity, creativity, alertness, mental well-being, happiness, whatever it is. Or the converse of that, if you lack it, the threats or the punishments that you speak over yourself. If I am not, I am agitated, I have a short fuse, I can't focus, I'm not productive, I don't have energy. All of these things are just weaknesses that you literally build into yourself. So stop.
Rule number 7 is make good decisions.
And one of the sayings that I live by is that we're one decision away from changing our life forever, right? You're one decision away from drinking and getting killed in a car accident. You're one decision away from, cheating on your spouse and destroying your marriage. You're one terrible comment away from destroying your child, right? And you're also one decision away from destroying your business if you so chose. So decisions are the wellspring of life, or at least the train track splits of where we're going to end up. All right. Learning to make the decisions is an important concept, but believe it or not, for this video, what I want to focus on is actually the environment under which to make the decision. During this process, one of the things that was very frustrating for me, and this decision took me about 12 months to make, and I'll explain what the decision was in another video in the future, but it's safe to say it was a hugely impactful decision in my life, financially and otherwise. One of the difficulties that I was having is that the information that I had was not changing, and yet my decision of which way to go continued to falter. All right, so I kept ping-ponging back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And so I was like, it's not my decision-making process, right? And the data that I have to make this decision is unchanging, and yet at different days, I would have different outcomes, which to me is big red flag danger alert in terms of the a leading indicator of a bad decision. Mind you, as a quick caveat to this is not how you need to make all the decisions in your life. I would say that you should find and use this process for the most important decisions you make in your life. Who are you going to marry? Where are you going to live? What are you going to work on, right? What are you going, like, those are the decisions, are we going to make this big strategic change in our business? Those are big, irreversible decisions. And that's the key for me, is that if a decision is irreversible, and has downstream consequences, then those are the ones that take more time to analyze. All right. Now, here's the piece that I was missing in my equation for making these decisions, which I want to share with you. All right. One of the key pieces of how we decide is the brain chemistry that is going on. So whether you have lots of dopamine, lots of serotonin that are circling around in your brain will ultimately affect how you make decisions. Believe it or not, we are 100% emotional decision makers. The thing is what we want to do is control the extent to which the emotions control our decisions. All right, that's the key point here. If you don't acknowledge that emotions weigh into all of your decisions, even your quote rational ones, you are lost. All right. What you can do is first identify when you are feeling emotional. And a lot of guys feel like this is like a foo-foo term. If you're angry, it's emotional. If you're insecure, that's emotional. Like, there are other emotions besides being a pansy. If you have emotions, it decreases the speed with which you make decisions. And mistakes love a rushed decision. You can say it with me. Mistakes love a rushed decision. It's one of the credos that Leila and I live by. The environment under which we make this decision is important. Now, we have to acknowledge the biases that we have. Here's where emotions get even worse. You have two biases that you have to fight against. One is confirmation bias, which is your emotional soup in your brain is going to say, this is what I want because this is how I feel safe. Then your logical brain will search out reasons or data to support that thing, right? It's like making an argument to yourself. The problem is you may change your argument, but it's not going to change reality, which means that the decision can be good or bad based on the soup that we started as the predisposition towards how we were going to gather data. The second is conviction bias, which is, how convicted am I in this thing or this decision? The more you believe in it, or the more you want the positive outcome to occur, the more you will purposefully blind yourself because you want to save your ego and how you feel about yourself, because it makes you feel good to think about this positive outcome. But it does not affect the percentage likelihood that it actually occurs in the real world, which is why you see other people, because you can be rational about others, you see other people make these terrible decisions and you think to yourself, why on God's earth would they make those decisions? When in reality, that person is you and it's other people who are looking at you.
Rule number 8 is be consistent.
Here are the lessons that I take away from Chick-fil-A that I've tried to apply at as many different places in the portfolio companies that we own, and even just at acquisition.com at the holding company. Number one is that they sold chicken sandwiches for 76 straight years, and I don't think they're going to stop. Having singular focus on the core products and not getting cute and not getting fancy and not having 49 menu items, but just saying, what are the things that the most people want, and how do I get better and better and better at doing those things? Because better gives you leverage. It means the same input gets you more output. Rather than having lots of different things that you have to put input in, you just put more and more and more, because you only have so much juju. If you had 2 items, you can only split test them half as much as you could 1. For example, if you think about this like an Olympic runner, the difference between first place and fourth place in the Olympics is 1/10 of a second. But the difference between first and fourth for a person's life, massively different. We get these outsized returns by making these marginal improvements of being better rather than being new, despite our entrepreneurial desire to have not a chicken sandwich. We're like, what about tacos? What about burgers, right? Like, how many times could they have done something like that? But they did it because they knew that they wanted to stick to the essential few, and they knew that focus is what was going to compound over the long term. Ruthless prioritization on the essential few items that they need to sell. The fact that they haven't changed their menu in decades should be a testament to the fact that we as entrepreneurs want to change all the time. There's a Henry Ford story that I think drives this home. He was looking at a marketing campaign and he had been working on it with his executives, etc. 3 or 4 months in, he walked past his marketing CMO's office and was like, hey, when are we gonna stop running that ad? He's like, I'm so tired of it. And the marketing executive looked up to him and he was like, you haven't even ran it yet. And so the thing is that we have all these things that happen in our mind because we're always iterating. Like, we assume everyone knows everything about our products. We assume everyone's already bored of it because they're talking about chicken sandwiches 24 hours a day. But reality is that most people might get Chick-fil-A once a month, right? As a treat. The customer's perception, when we change something slowly in our mind every 6 months as a small business, to a customer, it just feels like it's constantly changing. There's no consistency. People value consistency. People want to know that when they exchange money, they're going to get the thing that they liked last time. And if you make the same thing the same way over and over again, it also gives you the opportunity to improve it. If you have to improve 100 things, it's a hell of a lot harder than improving 2 or improving 1. And so you've heard me say 1 product, 1 avatar, 1 channel for anybody who's trying to make their first million. Each one of these stores, if you think about them as a single business, like that's how they're thinking. Now, do they have drinks? Yes, etc. The principle behind it compared to everyone else in the marketplace, they have a quarter the amount of things on their menu compared to McDonald's, and they make twice the money. They have such a refined menu because it makes the order process have fewer mistakes in it. It makes the drive-through process happen faster. They're able to have less food go bad because they don't have to have all these extraneous options. They follow Pareto's principle of 80-20. They know that 20% of their stuff creates 80% of their sales. They have all of these efficiencies in there because they're not trying to be cute. They're trying to be the best at a handful of things, and by doing that, they've been able to sell way more than anyone else does with a way more constrained menu and do it so much more profitably. There's wisdom there. And so I try to think about that as like, okay, even though I could do those things, should I? And most times the answer is no. I should just get better at the thing that's in front of me and confront the problem that I have, which is how can I sell more chicken sandwiches, whatever your chicken sandwich is. And to drive even further on the focus they had, even at a micro level within their core product, the chicken sandwich, if you compare that to McDonald's Big Mac or Burger King's Whopper, McDonald's Big Mac has 6 ingredients. The Whopper has 7, not including the bun. Now compare that to Chick-fil-A's sandwich, which just has butter, pickles, and chicken. That's it. They even have half the ingredients on their 1/4 sized menu because even then they get more efficiencies at the ingredient level. They make it faster and easier to prepare so it's more consistent, and they're able to do that with greater economies of scale, and they can make the process itself leaner and faster and leaner and faster, and then you do that for 76 years and you become unbeatable. So one of the things that when they were asked, why are you so limited in your selection? Besides all the reasons I already gave, their response was that every time they added another item, they just saw their sales of their main thing decline. So they're just splitting some sales off the thing, their core products. And so how many of us have opened a new thing, gotten people to switch from the old thing to the new thing, and now you're doing 2 different things for the same amount of money? Sound familiar? Happens all the time. And so it takes the discipline to say no and say, we're just gonna get better.
Rule number 9 is acquire skills.
One of the concepts, or one of the things that I get asked a lot when I go, well, on the rare occasions that I go out in public, is, how do I make more money? How did you get started? What should I be investing in? And I think that it's really important to understand that if someone's able to achieve something faster than you, they're using the same resources that you have from a time standpoint. And so it just means that they're allocating their attention in places that they're getting disproportionate returns on it, right? And so the objective is, how can we find the biggest ROI buckets that we can put our time into so that we can extract as much value as humanly possible, as fast as possible? And so my belief in this is that information is the single best investment that you can have because information is the only thing that buys you time. Does that make sense? A lot of people want to go faster, but then they don't want to spend money on learning how to go faster. And that is the only thing that gets you from point A to point B in a shorter period of time. And so where it gets really interesting is, how do you acquire those skills? And so can I give you 2 habits that I think have done really well for me in terms of acquiring skills? So the first thing is, I was up today at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm usually in bed right now. So this is my amped voice. But I say that because I also know I have a few billionaire friends who are night owls. And so I don't think it's a morning thing specifically. I think it's more important that you can always have 4 to 5 hours a day of uninterrupted time to yourself. The biggest breakthrough that I was able to have in my own life from a business standpoint came when I was able to move the big pieces forward every single day because I started my day that way. And for me, that's when I'm the most creative, is in the morning. And so that's where I invest all of my time in getting and acquiring skills.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is have fun.
What do you feel like your future mentor self, when it hits the $1 billion valuation, would say to yourself now? If you were 3 years out, 5 years out, whenever you hit this $1 billion valuation, and you could speak to yourself from the future, what would your mentor, future self, say to you right now that you need to hear?
Keep having fun.
Yeah.
Because, it would be like, if I had hit that at that point, he'd be like, keep doing it. Like everything you're doing, you got here because you're having a good time. So just don't lose track of that, because in 3 generations, everyone's just gonna forget that you're alive. No one's gonna remember your name. You're not gonna be the greatest of all time, because if you did your job, someone else will be even better and younger than you. And so like the only point of the game is to play. And it would just remind me of something that I already know to be true, but it would just be from future me. Hopefully he would just say it perfectly to my heart, and I would just become a new person, and I would transform, and I'd ascend, you know what I mean, in a halo of light. But that's hopefully what happened. When I was 15, 16, 17, I was a pretty angry kid. I thought that I had all these issues. I would tell people I have anger issues. I'm not a nice person. I would tell people those things because I believed those things to be true, and I saw them as problems. And then I went to college, and in college it's all propaganda of people who are teaching who've never actually done work in a real economy ever. They're all tenured, they don't live in reality. They tell everyone they should pursue their purpose and their passion and the things that they love, and I ate it up. And so I read all these books on positive psychology, I watched all these TED Talks, and the problem was I didn't make any progress, and I felt like there was something even more wrong with me because I didn't feel any of that stuff. I wish I could go back and tell myself, dude, all of the stuff they're saying is just not true. Like, you don't need any of that. You can embrace the fact that you are angry, you can embrace the fact that you feel like you are in pain, and you can use that to make the life that you want. You don't have to use the lovey-dovey purpose passion to build the life that you want to build. What it does is it tells people that having a negative emotional experience is a bad thing. But half of your life is below average by definition. And so if you are not using the half of your life as energy or motivation to create the life you want, then you're at a huge disadvantage. They interviewed the top Olympic medalists, and they found that they don't actually love winning. They hate losing. When they win, they experience relief, not euphoria. If you look at Steve Jobs, he wasn't some happy-go-lucky dude who was like, man, I just want to make the world a better place. He was a tough dude to work for, but he created something beautiful from that pain. MJ, you look at Kobe, they had imaginary situations that they created in their minds to create more suffering in their own lives to motivate them and use as fuel. Imagine you have this big vision for your life that you want, and on this side, your family gets kidnapped, and if you don't do something, they will kill them all. Which of those motivates you more right now in this video? Probably the one with your family getting kidnapped. It's not trying to harness a lovey-dovey feeling, it's harnessing pain. Felt like I had experienced more pain than I had good. I saw it as a disadvantage. I saw it as something that I had to overcome. I didn't have this big purpose. I didn't have this thing that I loved. I didn't have this thing I was passionate about. And if I could have just skipped all of that and started the moment I accepted that it was okay to be angry. What wasn't okay was not doing anything about it. While I procrastinated by trying to find purpose, jumping from thing to thing to thing, trying to find the thing that really lit my fire, and just accepted that it was totally okay to work my face off in disgust from my current circumstance and who I was, then I would have gotten to where I wanted to go much faster. So many people are believing a lie. They have to be happy, they have to have purpose, passion for what they're doing in order to get out of their situation. They think that they are poor because they don't have passion. That is false. You are poor because you're not doing the activities that make you rich. And you can fuel those activities whatever way you damn well please. And so if you are somebody who is more motivated by the dark side, then lean into the dark side. Unlike the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, the equal opposite of that is the road to heaven is paved with bad intentions. You can do good with bad motivation. And when I say bad, I mean negative experiences, pain, anger, etc. I still have tons of motivation from that side. You can use that negative fuel, hit it on speed dial every time you're confronted with that thing that you don't want to do. You push through it, and what happens, you do that enough times, you start to get good at the thing. You start seeing the result of work that has compounded and start to see a purpose or start to see a bigger vision. The big vision for Alex's life until maybe 4 years ago was don't be broke. What was your mission with Gym? My mission was to stop being poor. There are elements of that I do that I absolutely love, but there is tons of that I do every day that I hate. I just don't hate it more than I hate the alternative. And the richest people in the world, they all say it's not about the money. Because if it's about the money, you stop the moment you have enough. The people who are the wealthiest in the world have the three things in common. They have the big goal, they have massive fears about never being enough, and then they have impulse control to stay on goal. And oftentimes that impulse control comes from right as you approach the guardrail, looking over the edge and imagining what it would be like to have your friends tell you that you were a failure, or have them laugh behind your back, or talk down about you, or have your parents, when they're introducing you as their fun-loving kid, you know, he's still figuring himself out. That is what would crush me. The boring that you have to do is not fun. Jeff Bezos talks about overhead in business. There's tons of things that you have to do and be willing to do that you do not enjoy. The question is whether you do not enjoy them more than you do not enjoy the pain that you are going away from. As long as the pain of moving forward is less than the pain of going back, and the pain that you imagine from not taking the action that you know you should be taking, then you can use that energy as the single fuel that you can stay on path for an extended period of time. I'm writing my book right now. I'm on the 11th draft. Like, there is no feeling that makes me more sick than the idea that I could have done more. The pain of the idea of that book not doing well, or that book leading to people being like, I don't think he tried as hard. That is the thing that hurts so much more than going from the top yet again to make another video, to make another article, to make another short, to make another chapter revision yet again, so that when I do launch it, I think to myself, I literally exhausted every option on this. One of the sayings that I live by is that I will not do my best, I will do what is required. And the difference between what your best is and what is required is the difference between what you think your real best is and what your actual best is. And what your actual best is the thing that you would do to prevent everyone you know from dying. What people care about is the outcome, what you put out in the world. Now, why you do it, what fuels you, that's your business. And so if you are in one of these situations and you can't find that purpose, you can't find that passion, cool. But it doesn't give you permission to not be successful. When you're in your 20s, you probably aren't balling. And the amount of people on Instagram I see with their check mark that they bought in front of a Lambo that they whatever, like, we all get it. They're full of shit. We understand. The people who matter are not impressed. If I wear a $200,000 watch, all the buddies that I have don't give a shit. The guys who are ahead of you, they want to see you eating shit, living poor, learning, and hustling. You driving around in your new Rolls or Benz or whatever, and you're maxing out all of your expenditures so you can flex to other 20-year-olds is stupid. Now, you should take that same money and plow all of that into your own ability to earn more money. And that's what somebody who's ahead of you is going to look back and give you that status and respect for. Like, you can get status in your 20s from people who are ahead of you if you're doing the right stuff. If you show that you're on the wrong path, they automatically think, they're like, he doesn't get it, or she doesn't get it. They'll never associate with you until you understand the lesson.
You go from in your late teens and early 20s, kind of living your dad's life, going to school, being a management consultant, the whole kind of Iranian work ethic, become a doctor, all that stuff. And then at 22, you decide, no, peace out, I'm not doing this. And your dad feels you're making this giant mistake.
Of course.
But then what I loved about that story was that he comes back and gives you his only ever apology to you for saying it was a mistake. What did you have to do to then ultimately make him proud that he apologized to you?
Well, I mean, there's probably layers to this. You know, I mean, everyone's relationship with their parents are different. But for me, at least my dad, he was very much a material success guy. Like, every time he introduced somebody, like before he got in the car, after he got in the car, he'd be like, oh, this is so-and-so, this is how much money he makes, right? And so it was very clear, whether he said it consciously or unconsciously, like, that money was what, to him, is what was most respectable about someone. He would probably not like me saying that, but not through his words, but through his actions, it became clear to me that that is what he valued. And so for me to gain the affirmation or the approval of my father, I had to make money. But he also has his own ego and his own pride and whatnot. And so it couldn't be like I just have to match the amount of money that he makes. It's like I had to make more money than he'd ever made in his entire life for that to really solidify. And we're both pretty domineering personalities. And so there was like a 5-year period where we didn't talk too much. And I think there had to be a power shift that had to occur. And it only really occurred when the evidence was overwhelming. And so, like, when I started making money, I think the first year that we made like $10 million, he was like, well, we'll see how long it lasts. Like, it wasn't, you know what I mean? So like, it wasn't just like, you have to make more money. It had to be so insurmountable, the evidence, that it was undeniable. And so I think that that's also been a theme that I apply to a lot of the facets of my life, is that just through my own insecurities, I wanted to create, different pillars of my life that would be successful, quote, like beyond reproach, so that no one could say like, well, Alex is in good shape. It's like, no, he's in such crazy shape that no one can say that he's overweight, right? Or, he's not just like doing okay, but he's making so much money that no one can say that he's not successful. And I think, honestly, that's just because of my own insecurities. I don't think that's a testament to anything besides that. And I may still harbor those, and I just have evidence that allows me to function, better, and live in a more normal lifestyle rather than continually suffer from those, just because that evidence acts as a crutch against the insecurities that I have.
This is something I struggled with young. I don't know if you did. When I was young, I didn't have a lot of capital. I used to think, no, I will do these things because I can't afford the expenditure right now. Were you ever that way when you were young in business?
Totally.
I just held on
100%.
because I'm like, I had this scarcity idea that this may be the $2,000 a month that keeps me in business. Yet it was the very thing that kept me in the small business I had.
I think you got to work double time. There's no real sexy answer that I have for that, which is just like, you have to work the normal amount you would to make your money. And then you have to make enough, and then you work again to make someone else's money. And that's in the beginning. So it's like, I'm making my job and I'm making someone else's job so that I can buy that time that I used to work to pay someone else.
Very good.
To then make more money in that period of time.
Really good.
And the big thing that I think a lot of guys, because on the flip side of the entrepreneur space, the influencer or whatever space, people are always talking about buying your time back, but then they don't talk about what you do with the time you bought back. So if you just buy your time back and don't do anything, you're going to make less money. Want to be clear.
Yeah.
But because I had an entrepreneur who was talking, he was like, I bought all my time back. He's like, but I'm really not making it. I was like, you're not doing anything. Like, you still need to work. You just got to now work on higher leverage opportunities, more dollars per time. So in that input is my time, my output is my money. So it's a higher leverage thing of my time. For me, wisdom is the number one character trait that I wish to develop. And so when I think to myself, I am wise because I use the same formula that most people and most of us, myself included, use to destroy ourselves with these insecurities. And instead of saying an affirmation, you tell yourself the story of why what you're saying is true. You learn to argue against your own thoughts. And that's how you start developing this muscle, this traits that start to become a whisper and then a shout. If you are a patient person, if you are a kind person, if you are an integrous person, if you are a hardworking person. We all have these stories that we tell about ourselves. If you have a limitation right now on your character traits, you don't feel like you are patient enough, you feel like you are too easily distracted, you feel like you don't focus enough, then you need to start telling yourself the story, I am this way because, not I am wealthy. It's stupid, in my opinion. I think our brains are too smart for that stuff. You have to give it the reasons. You have to make the argument. And I think instead of affirmations, if you make affirmations into arguments that you make with yourself every day, then those become things that will change who you are. And if you change who you are and how you make decisions, you'll change your entire life, and you'll be able to watch your business grow as a result of who you have become. And so this is one of the things that was most powerful for me in my entrepreneurial journey. I had tons of insecurities, right? I had tons of anxieties. I had lots of anger. I had lots of perceived trauma. And I'll say it that way because I don't even want to make it into trauma. That's just what I perceived as trauma, because I was a child in the world with the emotional regulation of a child. And so things, of course, affect you more when you're a kid. Everyone's traumatized, perceives trauma as a child. Like if I go to a stage and I say, hey, who here had a traumatic childhood in some instance or had a traumatic event occur? Everyone's going to raise their hand. So stop thinking that because you have trauma, and I don't say this, I'll say it this way better. For me, I chose to stop giving trauma power. And I think if you can do that and you can tell yourself a different story about why you are who you are and make arguments instead of affirmations, you'll be able to have stronger, faster change in the direction that you desire, and you'll have more control over your emotional state. And then in so doing, you'll be able to level up the business that you have. Because most of the times when I see business owners, the reason they're not successful is not because they don't have the beliefs or because they don't have the skills. It's just because of who they are.
I'm wondering, from your first 10,000 to then and not just you, maybe prescriptive advice now. And then let's add a zero each time. So 10,000 to 100,000, a million. What's the mindset shift that I have to go by adding a zero to my revenue every step of the way so I don't get stuck?
It's a really good question. So when you're adding zeros, you're adding an order of magnitude, right? So it's a multiple, of 10 that's happening with each of those scenarios. And the only way you can really add an order of magnitude is not by doing 10 times more work, but by adding leverage, right? And so we have to have leverage to the things that we do. And so, in the beginning, you transition from being employed to being self-employed, right? And so that's kind of the first transition. And then your limit is going to be your time and how much you can bill per hour, right? From there, your next level is going to be building the core team, which is usually five or so people, which will be representative of departmental functions within a company, right? You'll have
some element of promotion, some element of selling, some element of customer service, some element of finance, and things like, and that would probably, and then you are kind of managing in that. You're not really leading yet. You're really just managing the people below you. And in that time, typically you are better at the job at each of those roles than the people beneath you, because you cannot afford people who will be better than you at those roles. From there, adding another level of leverage, you then add another layer of management that goes, and then you really transition into being a leader, because you can't possibly, so like each of those people now have 5 people underneath of them, right? Now you're at, 25 or 30 people. And most of the stagnation points do happen around triplings. And that's usually because another whole layer of infrastructure needs to get built within a company. And so that's where people don't know what has to happen. And so that's when you go, and once you're a leader, you have to go into kind of step into the visionary role, and you're really hiring people who come with batteries included, solutions already having proven inside of them. Not, I have to go find some person, teach them how to manage a sales team, teach them how to recruit. No, you're finding somebody who's already built a 30-person sales team to help you build, take your 5-person to a 30-person sales team, right? It's like you want to find somebody who's already run the Olympic gold, and then have them run it with you, rather than I'm a running coach, I've never run gold, but I'll try and do it with you. And the thing is that when you're earlier on, the reason it's difficult is because you can't afford some of those people yet. And so that's why early on, you have to spend a disproportionate amount of your time learning the skills, right? Rather than hiring people who already have those skills. So in the beginning, you're learning, and your ability to learn is the bottleneck. And later, it's your ability to recruit people who have learned. And so it's just like in business where you can buy or you can build, like in terms of growing through mergers and acquisitions. So this is really going from top down. At a medium level, you can buy or build talent. You can buy talent by paying premium dollar for the best people, or you can build it. And both of those are strategies. You can build a system for designing and training salespeople. That was something that we were really good at. And so we could take people for less than top dollar and then make them into top dollar salespeople, right? Now, the risk that you have there is that some people then start recruiting your salespeople, right? Because you did the building for them. But it just depends on the strategy of the business overall. And so in terms of going from 10K to 100K a month, to $1 million a month, to 10 million a month, each of those represent orders of magnitude on leverage that you can employ within the business. And I'll just finish with one little thing. I know I just ranted a little bit, but the leverage, and this is from Naval Ravikant, this isn't me, but I remember the 4 C's. He doesn't say 4 C's. I remember 4 C's because otherwise I can't remember it. But it's like you've got code, you've got content, you've got collaboration, you've got capital, right? And so collaboration is the base of that pyramid of just getting other people to do stuff for you. So you get time back by having other people give you their time and you pay them for it, right? The level above that is capital. You use other people's money to fuel growth, right? And if you know how to structure your business properly, you can also use your customers' money to fuel growth if you monetize well. In that if you can set up your marketing and your sales system such that you can make more money than it costs you to acquire a customer and the next customer within the first 30 days, you have a negative acquisition cost, which means you can use that money to then go get more customers. And you basically have a limitless acquisition cycle. Now, you'll still have bottlenecks, but there'll be infrastructure bottlenecks on the back end. So there's always a bottleneck, but it no longer becomes acquisition. So you have collaboration, then you have capital, and then the top two are content and code. So you have software, which has zero cost of replication, which gives you limitless leverage. And to the same degree, like what you've done, with media, right, content, it doesn't cost more money for more people to see this. Like if you and I were on here with just one person, or you and I are on here with 1 million people, it costs the same amount for us to do it, but we have leverage. And so with most businesses, and this is like a fun rule of thumb for anybody who's looking, when you look at the biggest businesses that have been around the longest, they typically will have all 4 of those aspects of leverage built within the business. Like you look at Facebook, they have lots of people, they have capital from the outside, they sell media based on code, right? And so as you're looking to scale the company, it's like, how many boxes of these leverage can I check? And I would even look at my own life, and I would say right now we have 3 of the 4. Like I don't have a big software component within my business, but we do have media, we do have collaboration, and we do have capital. And so I think that for us, and I made a presentation about this, like I think for us going from 10 million a month to maybe 100 million a month, I'll probably have to figure out some sort of code thing. But at current, we're able to, still do 10 million a month with the stuff that we're doing.
I hate to use this term, but I'm pretty good at resource allocation. And so what I mean by that is if we have limited resources and time and money and bandwidth or attention, and we have unlimited options that the world presents us, we have to learn to say no to 99.99% of things truly, because options are unlimited.
resources are. And so the ability to allocate resources, I think for me has allowed me to move through things quickly.
Yeah.
I've been able to move quickly through life because I've been able to allocate my energy into the highest leverage activities, the things that I get the most return on for my time.
There's 3 traits that people, when they looked at, because they were trying to find habits of highly successful people. And when they actually pulled apart, it's not, and I hope I'm not contradicting anything. But there's people who are really rich who wake up really late and work really late. And there's people really rich who wake up really, really early. And there's people who are really rich who eat really healthy. And there's people really rich who drink Coca-Cola and eat French fries every day. And so there's all these things that we want to make as truths, but there's easy examples that counter those things. So it's like, what are the few things that are true, or at least that seem to be present in all of the situations? And it seems as though there were surprisingly few. And so the 3 common traits that they had found were, 1, that people have a superiority complex. They believe they're better than others, and they believe that they deserve more than everyone else does, and that they can accomplish big goals, right? So they have a bigger vision because they believe they deserve it, or whatever it is, that they were able to identify that. The second thing that they were able to identify is that they had crippling insecurity, and which is a paradox of paradoxes. They feel they'll never be enough, and they'll always be measured against the things that they've achieved. And so you've got this crazy dynamic between they think they're better than everyone, they think they deserve more, they want to go after this big hill, and at the same time, they fear they'll never be good enough, and they'll never actually achieve it, and they actually suck. And then the third piece, which kind of adds the beautiful mix of this, is impulse control.
Yeah.
And so they're able to control their actions and focus on a single thing for an extended period of time. And so if you put those 3 things together, it's like you've got a big goal that's pulling you this way. You've got this big fear that you are running away from, and then you've got impulse control to keep you focused on the one thing that matters.
Yes.
And if you do that, if you are the type of person who has those traits, then you are very likely to be successful. Something that I was analyzing a lot, because we get lots of entrepreneurs who are like, hey, what should I do with my life, et cetera. And when I look at how my income has increased, throughout my career, a lot of times it wasn't a function of the work ethic. In the beginning, you have to work, right? But then the next big lever on that is the opportunity. And so if you think about any kind of output in a system as volume times leverage equals output, the work has to start. So you have to have something to multiply, which is the effort. And then the next is that leverage. And so within the context of a business, I tried to define it for myself, which was how many potential units of the product can I sell? And then what is the gross margin potential of the product that I'm trying to sell? And then what are the competitive dynamics within the marketplace? And so an example of something that has 2 of the 3 and not necessarily all 3 would be like, if I want to get into telecommunications. So I said, okay, I hate that I have no service. I want to solve this problem. And so I'd say, well, everybody needs phone stuff. So huge potential market. The gross margins on an additional user is almost 100%. So, okay, really attractive. But then what are the competitive dynamics? Oh, I would have a really hard time entering into this marketplace because it's super capital intensive, et cetera. And it's like, okay, so maybe the opportunity now we rewind the clock 50, 60 years or 80 years, and that was the opportunity, right? Because you had all 3 of the dynamics. But then you look at newer things like crypto, you look at, the cannabis industry, which is still nascent. And those were, a lot of people smoke weed or want to, be involved in that industry or participate in consuming it, right? There's great margins, especially if you're vertically integrated within the space. And then the competitive dynamics are still, you can still be a new entrant and have a huge amount of market share as it's continuing to grow faster than the rest of the marketplace as well. So there's a fast growing market that's growing faster. So if you just stayed the same as the market, you're still going to outpace anybody else.
Really good.
And there's fewer people taking it up. And so it's like you have two competitive dynamic kind of trail winds behind you. And so when I looked at, we exited our 3 companies last year, I was like, okay, I want to be really, really selective about what opportunity we pursue, because I know that, Warren Buffett's one of my big heroes. And he talks about how it's much more about not about how hard you row, but about what boat you're in. And he tells a story about how he had a companion who was basically the same as him, and they both split off from Columbia, and he became Warren Buffett, and the other guy just had a normal career in the steel business. Different opportunity. And so I think being selective about the opportunities we pursue is probably the greatest leverage point you have on your career. I think the difference between rich people and poor people, successful people, not successful people, is the degree to which they attribute or give power to their circumstance, right? And so the difference between a self-made billionaire who started with nothing and someone who else started with nothing is not the resources, obviously, because they both started at 0. So what else is it? Is their resourcefulness, not the resources. And so if we give power to circumstance, then we cast power outside of ourselves. If we give power to other people, we cast power outside of ourselves. And so it's controlling the controllable. And when I say that quote, a lot of that is how, that quote is how I see selling. It's people cast power to their circumstances, and my job is to get them to unfuck themselves around the power that they have just cast to something they cannot control. And so if I can just get them to even just own the fact that they suck, that's good enough, because they actually can own it, and there is pride in that. You can take pride in the fact that you admit that there's a deficit, right? But the only thing you can't take pride in is casting and being a victim, right? Like, no one moves forward. Even if you're right, it doesn't serve you, right? If you're born with one less leg than you should, you're right. You're not going to be, you have a disadvantage at being a sprinter. Like, you have a disadvantage. But it doesn't serve you in any way to admit it. And so it's owning the fact that, like, you are the only person who can actually change anything about your life, because you may blame your circumstances, but no one else will care. Learning about leverage was the thing that took me a long time to understand in terms of what boat I'm in. So I'll give you the quote from Warren Buffett, but he said, I'll give you the full quote. So he had his closest friend from Columbia Business School who went to school with him. They were really smart, really hardworking, liked each other a lot. When they finished, his best buddy went to do into steel business, manufacturing steel, and then he started Berkshire Hathaway. 30, 40 years later, this guy, the steel business is a tough business, right? He made an okay living. He's like, but he didn't do anything really exceptional. And then Warren built Berkshire Hathaway. And he said, and that's when I learned that it wasn't about how hard you row, but what boat you're in. And so there's a lot of really, really hardworking people out there who are really smart. They're just not, the thing that they're missing is ignorance of opportunity, is ignorance of leverage. And so if you can get into a better leverage opportunity, the same time or same effort or same intelligence can yield you a 10x, 20x, 1000x return, which is hard to conceptualize, but still true. Mm-hmm. And so understanding the leverage of the opportunity, and then from a character perspective, understanding that I have to pick a high leverage opportunity and I must stick with it for an unreasonable amount of time. I have to just keep doing it. And the outsized returns, the compounding of the opportunity comes from the depth of the experience, which comes through repetition. And so a lot of people get, whether a mile wide, an inch deep, rather than a mile deep, an inch wide. And most times that kind of depth of experience is what gives you the compounding outsized returns in the longer haul. And so I think if I had known, one, how to pick the right opportunity, and two, said, okay, if I did just this thing for the next 10 years, it would be unreasonable for me not to be a billionaire, then nothing else matters. Mm-hmm. So even if somebody's like, dude, I've got this new tech thing, it's gonna be huge, I could say, totally understand. But if I do just the thing I'm doing right now, I'll get to $1 billion, which is right now the current goal, right? Yeah. And so that's it. Like, and I could have 20 other things. Like, dude, we got to do this building together. Like, I'll bet you I could make money on that. But if I do nothing else besides this one thing that I'm focused on, I will get to $1 billion. And so everything that is not that is a distraction from that.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video, because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Grant Cardone, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
This is the secret of the successful people. This is what I've committed my life to doing. I told my mom when I was 16 years old, one day I'm gonna be successful, and one day I'm gonna help a lot of people. I always say this, pay the price today so you can pay any price